So, just some revision on your human fieldwork inquiry, which will come up in section B, and it will be after the unseen fieldwork questions. So, your human fieldwork inquiry, which we do at the start of year 11, is: has the regeneration out South Bank in Leeds had a positive impact? So, a reminder that South Bank was a brownfield site that now has homes on it, it has a school, it has different tourist attractions, it has its sustainable housing, it has improved transport, and air park is being built. What you need to know for your fieldwork, both your human and your physical, is the suitability of the location and the inquiry, the risks, the data collection, so how we collected data, your data presentation, so how did you present that data, your overall conclusion, and the evaluation, so what went well, what didn't go so well, and what could we do if we were to do this again to make it more valid, more accurate, more reliable. So our hypothesis and aims: it's predicted that the regeneration would have had a positive impact as it was once a brownfield site. That you hope to see the buildings being used, the environmental quality to be good, and people's opinion to be overall positive. The reason the location was suitable is it was close to school, which means we had time to gather more data. And the more data, the bigger the sample size, the more accurate it's going to be. It is still being regenerated, so the data was more accurate and up to date. And it is a known area, so there is less risk involved. This could come up in the exam in a variety of ways. One of the most recent questions, when it said, assess the suitability of the location chosen for your human geography inquiry, and that was worth 6 marks. The command word is to assess, so you need to be positive about the location and why it was a good thing for you to help you to collect data, how it helped it to be more reliable, how it reduced the risk, but also why the location wasn't suitable. So if you remember, we collected data at 2 points, one outside the Royal Armouries and walking up to the Tesco, and then the other at situ, which is the sustainable housing. Was those 2 sites that we visited representative enough to talk about South Bank? Remember, we did a variety here of data collection methods. So we had our environmental impact assessment. That was where we rated different aspects such as graffiti, green space, community, so being able to sit together, etc., between -3 and +3. +3 was positive, minus was not. And then altogether, we could see if the area was mostly positive or negative based off of the scores. We did questionnaires that involved asking random questions that would help answer the inquiry questions. So we literally asked them, how do you think the area is nice? Has it had a positive impact? Do they know what regeneration is? Would they say this area looks like it's being regenerated? We usually ask a minimum of 20 people. And then a land use tally that involved a blank map of the particular area, and we tallied what the buildings were being used for. We were hoping to see a small number of vacant, empty buildings. AQA could ask you about how you collect data and then to evaluate it. So, thinking about what's good, it was quick and easy to do. It didn't require any specialist equipment, and everyone was able to do it. It gave us a range of primary data sources we could use, and we can compare the results from these 3 different methods together. We can talk about them in conjunction with each other. And then it gave both quantitative and qualitative. Remember, quantitative is good because we can develop averages and it's easy to present and see patterns, but qualitative is more of our subjective opinion. And then what was not so good about the data: it could be subjective or biased. So when we judge the environment, that was your opinion. You would have had a different opinion to your friend or anyone else in the class. The time of day. So if you went and it was less busy, it means we were asking less people, so it affected our sample size. Were the questions appropriate or answered correctly? Did they know what the word regeneration meant? And then did you get a big enough sample size, and which type of sampling did you pick, and was that effective? And then data presentation, we obviously did a bar chart for our land use tally, but we did something new, which was a radar graph. And that showed different variables. So this is how we plotted our environmental survey, and we were able to plot them both on the same graph so we could easily compare the two locations. So the wider the shape, the more positive the environment was. But this was something we did that was brand new, so people may have plotted it wrong, and it can be quite difficult to read and understand. This could come up in the exam. There's 2 questions I've put on there, a smaller question and then a 6 marker. So justify one way you presented data in your human geography inquiry, and then assess the effectiveness of your data presentation techniques in your human geography inquiry. So the 2 command words are justify. So if you're justifying, you're telling the examiner how you presented it and why it was a way to show the data that you collected, why you did it in that way to show the data you collected. And then if you're assessing the effectiveness, you're saying how good something is. So consider how useful it was for your inquiry. Why was it a good way to present the data? What went wrong, though, which maybe might have affected your overall fieldwork, and what could you do to improve it, which we always talk about doing it on a computer instead of doing it by hand so it's more accurate. And then a reminder about evaluation is if you're evaluating, which you will need to do in the 9 marker at the end, and I've talked about 3, for example, the past 3 years, 9 markers on the physical geography fieldwork, but saying what went well in helping you reach a valid conclusion, saying what went wrong that could have affected the validity, the accuracy, the reliability, and then what would you do next time to make your conclusion that the regeneration at South Bank in Leeds has had a positive impact, making it more reliable and more valid. So, for example, if we bugged a question together now, we've got a to what extent, which we know because we see it in paper 1 and 2. How far do you agree? The results. So just summarising some of the results, most of the buildings were being used and they weren't vacant. We had a positive environmental score for both locations visited, and 70% of people asked gave either a good or a very good response about the area. Our conclusion is that it had a positive impact. All of the data showed positive results and opinions. And then the structure is still the same, as I said, of the physical field work. And what I've just talked about is your positives, negatives, and what you do to improve. Please just note that it says for one of your fieldwork inquiries, so you can write about whichever one you feel most comfortable with your 9 marker. Check out the physical fieldwork one and the unfamiliar one if you haven't already.